Welcome back to my darkroom. Today, we are going to be asking the age-old question, do we need a piece of paper under the grain focuser or not? So if you've spent any time on the internet, on any sort of darkroom forum, you're going to see the argument, do you need a piece of paper under the grain focuser or not? Some people will swear that you do. Some people will swear that you don't. I've read it in books, I've read it on the internet, but I have yet to see anybody actually show me conclusively one way or the other. So today, that's exactly what we are going to do. We're going to make a few different prints. I am going to use the same negative. I stole one from my wife, because I don't shoot a lot of 35 millimeter. We're going to take that. I'm going to use 35 because we have to make a big enlargement from that. I normally shoot large format. A big print is still a pretty small enlargement, so we're going to use a small negative, big enlargement. We're going to check focus with and without the paper at an 8 by 10 inch size, and then we'll go all the way up to a 20 by 24 inch size. So while we'll be making small prints, they are just portions of bigger prints. So let's take a quick look and see what kind of setup we need. Before we get over there, however, if you are looking for ways to compose your photograph before you set up your camera, consider getting one of these composition frames that I've made from American Black Walnut with some 550 paracord as a good neck strap. I've got 3 different formats available. You can get these from my store. Link is down in the description. Only $15 a piece, and they will help you figure out exactly where you want to place your camera, where you might want to position it, and what focal length you might need for your photograph. It's a great tool to use, and these are great little devices. Get yourself one now. All right, let's go make some prints. We're over here at the enlarger. I'm going to be using this portion of my easel just to get a little 4x5, and we're going to be using a 50 millimeter lens. We're going to do this a couple of different ways. We're going to do this wide open, which is going to have the shallowest depth of field as any lens would when it's wide open. And then we're going to do it again, both with and without paper, stopped down to its optimal aperture, which most lens manufacturers will tell you is 2, maybe 3 stops from wide open. So in this case, since it's an f2.8 lens, we'll be stopping down to 5.6 and redoing the test. So first step first, I need to go ahead, get all the lights out, and we will focus this and start making some prints. So we're going to cycle through all this with a music montage, 80s style, and then we'll take a look at the prints next to each other and see what kind of results we get. So let's hit some lights. On the left is the sample with no paper. On the right is the sample with paper under the grain focuser. The grain Of course, it's small because it's a relatively small print. It is 8 times the size of the original negative. Since the 35mm negative is 1 inch by 1.5 inches, this would make it approximately a 6 by 9, so about a 6-time enlargement, really. We can see that, quite frankly, the grain is just about the same. I see no difference in sharpness between the two. But let's go ahead and zoom in. The macro lens I'm using is capable of 1:1. So let's zoom in 1:1 and look at these side by side to see if there's any actual difference once we get really, really close. And here we can see the grain at a 1:1 magnification of the 8x10 print. There's virtually no difference at this point between paper and no paper. Here is our 5.6 aperture for the 8x10 equivalent, and we're already sharper. So we can see between the two prints, again, there is no difference that I can tell at this perspective, which is just a standard viewing distance, between the sharpness of grain of paper or no paper. There is quite a difference, as you can see here, if we flip to the 2.8 version, a dramatic difference just by stopping down. So when the manufacturer says you get better performance, stopped 2 stops from wide open, I think you can see, and we can all agree, that we are in fact getting much better performance stopped down. The paper under the grain focuser, I'm not seeing any convincing evidence yet, but this is a fairly small print. We're going to do a much larger print in just a moment. Let's zoom in to 1:1 and see if on really close inspection, if there's actually any discernible difference. And here on very close inspection, again, there is no difference in sharpness of the grain, which is not surprising. The first image, the lens being wide open probably did not have the sharpness to show any difference. Here, stop down 2 stops, the lens most likely has enough depth of field to make up any difference that might actually be there in the lens. So at least with a modest enlargement, we're not going to have any difference. Now, I said before, this is most likely around a 6 times enlargement, going from 1 inch on the short side of the negative to a 6-inch approximation on the short side of the print. If you're shooting large format, that would be equivalent, say, a 4x5 negative being enlarged up to a 24 by 30 inch print. So you're not going to see much difference at all with a print, even a large print at that point, between the grain. 6 times bigger, but the lens seems to be adjusting for that with the depth of field. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the 20 by 24 inch enlargement from a 35mm negative, and let's see if there's any difference when we get to really big enlargements. All right, here we can see again on the left is the print with no paper under the magnifier, and on the right, paper with. This is at a 20 by 24 inch magnification or print size. That's roughly a 20-time magnification. Now that's really pushing the limits of what this lens can do. There are series of lenses from both Schneider and Rodenstock for 20-time enlargements that are different than their standard enlarging lens. I do not have one. So this is really getting to the max. Most things, publications about the lenses will say 10 times is really about as much as you want to get. So that would be about a 10 by 15 inch print from a 35mm negative. Of course, 10 times from 4x5 would be a 40 by 50 inch print. And from 8x10, 80 by 100 inch. So very, very large. In this case, however, again, we are not seeing any real difference in the grain at a viewing distance, because looking at these prints, I am standing at about half a meter away, maybe more like 25 4 inches. So that's about 60 centimeters. And there is no discernible difference. Of course, the video camera is zoomed in to show it at full size of the 4x5 print, which is much closer than I am viewing it at. But we're going to zoom in even closer and look at 1:1, and then we'll show the 5.6 aperture. So let's look at this. Again, this is the 2.8 aperture. So let's go in and look at it 1:1. All right, looking at the 1:1, again, I am not seeing any discernible difference as to whether or not you've got the paper under the magnifier. But this is at 2.8. When we stop down to 5.6, who knows? Maybe we will see a sharpness difference. Personally, I don't think we're going to. I think that depth of field is going to make up the difference. But let's go ahead and see. Okay, so here we are at the 4x5 center section of this 20 by 24 inch print. We're at 20 time magnification, 5.6, and I'm not seeing any difference at a viewing distance. Let's zoom in. We'll give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's zoom in 1:1, look as close as we can to this grain, and see if there's any difference we can see at all. All right, well, this is it. This is as close as we can get. And honestly, I see no difference whatsoever, which is not surprising. It's such a slim difference between the two that, quite frankly, you're going to have a bigger difference, a bigger impact as to whether or not you stop your lens down, the quality of the lens, and the accuracy of your alignment for your enlarger. That piece of paper under your magnifier is going to make zero difference whatsoever. It's just pure internet and 1960s book myth that there should be any difference with that piece of paper. So use it if you want to. Use it out of habit. Use it because you just like doing it. Don't use it. I don't. I never have. But I've always seen people argue about it. There is no argument to be had. There's no difference, period. So get out there and print. Get out there and make sharp prints. Don't use a piece of paper under your enlarging magnifier. There's no reason. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you bearing with me while we bust this internet myth. And we'll see you next time.